All right, then we're good to go.
Good to go. Thanks, Al. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the February meeting of the Heartland 2050 Regional Planning Advisory Committee. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February meeting of the Heartland 2050 Regional Planning Advisory Committee. It's good to see everyone. Let's jump right into it. We have a couple of good presentations today and lots of things to share out and catch up on. I first want to acknowledge that there is a lot of things happening in this world and in this country and in this local community, our respective communities, and it is heavy sometimes, and sometimes it's not. I think in heavy, tricky, divisive times we still have to find joy, we still have to do things that make us happy and bring us together and center us and recenter us. So with that, as you introduce yourselves before we kick the business off, Chris is like, what is he going to say? I'm going to make it easy on you. Please introduce yourself, who you are, who you work for. And I need you to call the outcome of the Super Bowl as the first part of the question. Do you have the Seahawks or the Patriots winning the game? And even if you're not going to partake in the game, what beverage will you have in your hand when the game? So come on, Ashley. And somebody kindly alphabetize that for you, so it shouldn't be hard to find. You're in the A's. So my name is Keith Station, City of Omaha Mayor's Office. I think the Seahawks are going to do it. And I'm in the mood, I think, this weekend for a nice Stella Artois in the glass with the gold rim. I think that's what I'm going to do. It's a nice Stella. Because it's going to be warm on Sunday and it'll be refreshing. Ashley, who's going to win the Super Bowl? Who are you? Who's going to win the Super Bowl? And what are you going to have in your hand when we're watching?
Hi everyone, Ashley Ray Turner, Chair of the Engagement Committee. I am de facto going for the Seahawks. I'm a Broncos fan,
Yep.
So
that's enough. That's enough, Mike. Go ahead.
And I won't be drinking because I'll be bartending. So if you don't have plans, you can come to Secret Park. We'll have a DJ in the game.
What?
And we selling you drinks. So
There you go.
Mike Helgerson, MAPA, got to go with the Seahawks as well, and I yet to be determined. I don't know yet.
Brian Lotus, Public Works, City of Omaha, Seahawks, and then like you, I'm not sure what I'll be drinking yet, but I'll figure it out. Game time.
You got time. Terry.
Terry Hawk, MOAC Education. I'll probably go for the commercials and go with a Diet Dr. Pepper.
Good morning, Eva Roberts with Front Porch Investments. My husband's a Connecticut Yankee, so we'll be rooting for the Patriots. And I'll probably be having a nice tart ranch water.
Nice.
Chris Meeks, OPPD. I was going to be the contrarian, be the first Patriots person, but I think I'm pulling for the Seahawks. And in my heart of hearts, I will be probably watching with a good shot of whiskey or something.
Mark Norman, I'm with the Greater Omaha Chamber, also Mills County Economic Development. I'm just rooting for a good game. Don't have a dog. I'm a Broncos fan, so I guess. And I'll probably just have a tall, stiff glass of water. That's what I'll probably be drinking. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Mark.
Speaking of stiff water.
Yeah.
Mark's going for Bad Bunny.
There you go. Bad Bunny, man.
It's gonna be fun.
Lindsay Neiman with UNMC, not super needing to be involved in the sport, but I think I'd throw my support behind Seahawks if I had to choose. And maybe, I mean, it's gonna warm up, but I'm still like a hot chocolate and a chai latte type of person. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe there'll be a shot of something in there. Maybe
Do it,
we'll
Lindsay.
see.
Do it.
I'm Ernie Bless with MUD. I'm not a sports guy, so the blue team. I'll drink a Belgian beer while everyone else is having fun.
Saul Lopez, MAPA. I'm gonna go for the blue team, and I'm also expecting to see Bad Bunny and been brushing up on the Spanish recently, so I think I'm gonna be able to understand a little bit of
Nice.
Jim Borner, Transportation Planner with MAPA, Seahawks all the way, and undecided.
Desi Redmond, City Council Bluffs, the Seahawks, question mark. And I'm undecided as well.
Chris Gibbons, City Council Bluffs. I really don't want to see the Seahawks win, but I also know I just don't think the Patriots defense can keep up with their offense either. So
much like me, something in my heart of hearts says the Seahawks probably win. And that pains me as a Packers fan because we've been on the receiving end of some very bad losses to that team. But nevertheless, the game has to be played. So what will I be drinking? I'm not sure yet. I do plan on smoking a hatch chili pepper pork butt, so I'll probably pair it up with like a Mexican pasta or something like that for the game. So
What was your address again?
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for that great analysis. Bring some of that pork smoked butt over to the secret park and let's have a party.
I'm Rachel Getch. I'm a MAPA transportation planner. I honestly just watch for the ads and the halftime show. So we'll go with that. And probably like a cream soda or something.
Elise Manuel, MAPA, rooting for the Seahawks, but Bad Bunny, and I also want to say Green Day, and that they're opening, so I'm excited to see them. Yeah, and I don't know what I'll drink yet. A beer.
Sue Cutsforth, Public Information Officer with MAPA. I think the Seahawks will win, and I'm undecided about what I'll be drinking.
Got time.
Andrew Crescent, Metropolitan Area Planning Agency. I'm Communications and Outreach Intern, the one who nicely alphabetized the. My cousin's a Patriots fan, so I have to root for them, but I don't think there's really a good chance they'll win. So I think the Seahawks will win, but I'm rooting for the Patriots. I'll probably have a cherry Coke, something simple like that.
Love it. Well, thank you, and for making the Berkshire Hathaway stock go up with that choice as well. And thank you for your alphabetization. Is that a word? Sure. Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach Fergus, Natural Resource Chair and current carrier of Flu B. So I'm gonna spare you guys all that. I think Seattle's got this weekend, and hopefully I'm sitting around with a local beer from Monolithic Brewing in Omaha. Got to represent local.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
stay up on those electrolytes too. If you've got you've got Flu B.
That's also great advice. Okay, Kitty, 92% of the room said the Seahawks, so I think you better hedge your choice here.
I'm for the underdog. I am a diehard Chiefs fan. I also believe in last minute miracles, and so I'm rooting for the Patriots. Kitty and my field office director for him.
Good to see you, Kitty. Thank you for sharing that. And we got one more. It's alphabetized, so you can.
And another one that just joined in.
Who just came in?
That's true. There's one more that is just joining in.
No, that's me.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, who's winning the Super Bowl and what are you sipping on?
Huskers and obviously I'm sipping on something very hard if that's what I think. Seahawks and hard soda.
Sounds good. All right, y'all. Thank you for indulging. It's good to see everyone once again. Please observe the Open Meetings Act posted here. So Drive, you're doing a good job, Sal. That's awesome. And the first order of business is to approve the December meeting minutes. If you recall, that was the joint meeting of the TTAC and the RPAC. It was a great meeting hosted at, we were at the Catalyst, and we had a nice tour of that afterwards. So we appreciate having a chance to move around a little bit and working with TTAC and the folks who are on both committees. Hopefully that was fruitful, and it's always good to get together and compare notes on that. So do we have quorum today? We do not have. Sue says no, we don't have quorum. So one of the orders of business for the next meeting will be to approve the December minutes unless a few more people show up. That's okay, but please observe those minutes. Some good data was shared and some great presentations that to kind of wrap up the year and to thrust us into this year. Okay, so thank you, Chris and Desi. Chris raised his hand and said we need to get this information shared with the RPAC group in this first meeting of the year. And so the floor is yours. Des, thanks for coming. This is how we get down here. So next time you didn't know what beverage you're gonna be drinking when you show up, you never know. It might be a different question. So Chris and Desi, please take it away. They're gonna discuss the Council Bluffs Reliance Battery Factory Brownfield cleanup project.
All right. Morning, everybody. How are you doing?
Great.
I want to preface it and say I'm a little disappointed Kent isn't here because, he gets to talk about all the landfill cleanups and start in Douglas County as well as lithium-ion battery disposal. And when Laura reached out to our presentation, I was like, what could I do that would resonate with Kent? I thought, let's talk about our brownfield project with the battery factory. So next time I see him, I'm gonna know he missed out on something.
And tell them to watch, because this is on the record.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm Chris Gibbons. I'm the city's planning and co-compliance manager of Council Bluffs. So with me today is Desi Redmond. She's a planner with our Housing and Economic Development Division. And she's worked pretty much instrumentally on this project we're getting ready to go over. So first thing I always like to start our presentations off with is the City Council Bluffs with a mission statement. That mission statement is to continuously improve the quality of life and attractiveness of the City of Council Bluffs. And the community development partner is really at the forefront of implementing this mission, whether it be through the adoption of development plans, through assisting people with getting high quality affordable housing, or with slum and blight removal, which does have a direct impact on your overall attractiveness and quality of life in any city that you're in. So really quickly, the community development department, we're a group of 30 individuals. We have 4 different divisions. The first one is our planning and zoning division. They're really tasked with kind of day-to-day operations for growth and development. So think about processing rezoning, subdivision applications, building permits, also assisting with long-range plans such as our joint land use study we completed with Pop County, or our West Broadway corridor plan, or even our Bluffs Tomorrow 2030 plan. Then we have our Housing and Economic Development Division. These individuals here are really tasked with one, assisting with federal grants that come in for CDBG. They help folks with obtaining down payment assistance to get into affordable homes in our community. They also help individuals with emergency rehab or repairs to homes that may not have the income to make those necessary repairs. And then we also work with individuals for, like I said, down payment assistance, rehab, revitalization, and TIP. They also do TIP as well. Permits and inspections, I think that kind of speaks for itself. These are our building inspectors. They also process building permits, do home inspections. There's a rental housing division associated with this division who makes sure that people in our community have access to safe, quality rental housing. And then last but certainly not least is the outlier animal control. They're more or less tasked with dangerous animals, pet licensing, following up on animal cruelty. They have some of the best stories, but also some of the saddest stories that you hear coming out. So we're a pretty collective group here. Again, there's 30 of us. So with that being said, let's kind of jump into the presentation. So former Reliance Battery Factory. So this is a site that's located at 22nd Avenue and South 8th Street in Council Bluffs. It's more or less kind of in the southerly central portion of our city. It comprises basically 1.5 acres of land. It was established in the early 1920s prior to the city adopting zoning in 1927. And once it was constructed, the neighborhood kind of grew up around it. And so being that it's a battery factory, they dealt with a lot of heavy metals and contamination. And over time, this site became relatively obsolete. The factory closed, and then what was left back was a vacant industrial building that had a lot of contamination associated with it. As you can see, kind of what surrounds it, it's really low density, 1 and 2 family type residential area. The image here you see in kind of the left south left corner of the property here, that's actually a photograph or an artist rendering of what the factory looked like back in the early 1930s. And it's fairly accurate to what it looks like today. You can see the same here on the gable ends of the building. So we acquired it in 2020 after it's sitting there obsolete for pretty much decades. An individual had moved into the property, treated as more or less their private residence. They had cars in there that they were disassembling various parts from and using as a storage lot. And so as you can see, there's a lot of kind of neglect to the building. There's boarded up windows, busted out windows. The roof was kind of collapsing in. Just a true blight on this area of this neighborhood in our city. And so here's some inside pictures that kind of give you an idea of what the conditions were when we acquired it. So again, there were people living inside this building and they were treating it as their residence. And so you can see they had stockpiled various types of materials, equipment, tools, Here in this bottom left corner, that's somebody's bedroom. And you can see that there's a restroom right next to their bed there that they were using as their restroom.
I was fortunate to be able to go into this building several times, and the smell of the combination of industrial uses happening inside, plus people living there, was something I'll never forget. It was just a unique smell that you do not want to experience.
It was a 10,000 square foot house to, you know, a bunch of people, and but it didn't have operating utilities to it. And then here you can see on the right hand side, I mean, this is the decking of the floor, and you know, there's a fire in there. You know, the joists are rotted out, just in very, very, very bad condition. That image there on your left, that's a shower that they had kind of, you know, framed in there, you know, makeshift. And then here on the right, this is a wood stove with a TV monitor on top. You have exposed electrical wires right next to a heater. So, you know, very dangerous situation, you know, obviously not meant for human occupation, and really in need of being demolished and converted back to a better use of property. So with that, I'm gonna turn over to Desi. Again, she was the planner who really kind of worked on the applications to acquire it and demolish it, and she'll kind of walk you through the steps that we went through to clean up the property.
So in 2020, we acquired the property, and the original property was just kind of this piece here. And we acquired it with CDBG funds, which are federal dollars, and it was a voluntary acquisition. But even though it was voluntary, the person who owned it claimed that they had a business, so we had to pay relocation costs on top of purchasing the property. So once we acquired it, there were a lot of unknown hazardous materials inside. And so we had to get rid of those, and we used CDBG dollars for that as well. Next up, we demoed the property. There were two structures. There were the main structure here, and then a little structure there. And so we demolished the property and or demolished the buildings, and that the approximate cost of that was like $87,000. So we used CDBG funds for that as well. Then to square off the block, so make it easier for redevelopment, we purchased 2 single-family homes here, and we use CDBG funds for those as well.
And so when Desi said removing containers, we're talking barrels upon barrels of just unidentified liquids that we had tested. We have no idea what they really were. So very dirty.
Yeah, we tested them, and most of the tests came back as unknown, just because they've been sitting there for so long. They were just mostly just random liquids.
Like for how long?
I mean, since potentially 1925. Okay, then we obtained a brownfields cleanup grant. That grant was $500,000, and it was an EPA grant, and we were awarded that in 2022. We had applied for it in 2021, but we did not receive it, so we reapplied in 2022, and we did get it. And it did require a $100,000 match, and we used CDBG dollars for that as well. So the first step after getting the grant, we went through the RFP process for a qualified environmental professional. So we referred to it as the RFP for the QEP, which was fun to say all the time. The next step was starting to test for contamination in the soil. And so eventually we found out there were pretty high levels of lead and arsenic in portions of the site. Some of them went down 0 to 2 feet. Some of them went down up to 8 feet. And so they're mostly concentrated right here. This was a big place where we dug out 0 to 2 feet. And then there was actually some over by these residences as well. Underneath the battery factory, there actually wasn't that much contamination.
So it's a pretty sizable hole, as you can see in here. You start looking at the scale of the person standing there. I mean, you're talking usually probably 4.5 feet right there alone. But yeah, dig down into it.
Next, part of the EPA grant required us to enroll into the land recycling program, which is actually through the IDNR. And that created a significant increase in testing that they required. So we actually had to start testing on a lot of adjacent properties and some that weren't even adjacent to the battery factory. So that is the reason why this grant is still going, because of what the LRP is requiring us to do. At this point, we are starting to wrap up the grant, but there is still like a little piece of contamination within the boundary of the battery factory. So, and there's contamination in the right of way adjacent to the property. But once all said and done, we removed about 4,615 cubic yards of dirt, which was 385 truckloads approximately. So you can kind of picture in this residential area, these trucks are just going and going. And it was a lot for the residents to take on, because next we had to bring in clean dirt. So here's a few photos of the cleanup. This was that section that I was talking about, was about 0 to 2 feet in contamination, so not nearly as deep as some of them had to be like there. But it was a lot of dirt. Next was bringing in clean dirt. We brought in about 4,000 cubic yards of clean dirt. So we were trying to do it as quickly as possible, but at the same time, we couldn't run the trucks, you know, at night or anything, but it was a lot of just trucks coming in and out. So as we start to wrap up the grant, we have to figure out what are we going to do with the remaining parts that are still contaminated. Are we going to put environmental covenants on it, which would obviously hinder redevelopment? And then we'll just start finalizing the documents that go with closing out. And then we get to put out an RFP finally for redevelopment after 6 years.
So one of the things I'm kind of most proud about is, you know, Council Bluffs has a demonstrated history of taking out obsolete, blighted industrial properties and converting them back to a very productive use. I would say, look at our West Broadway corridor. You know, think about what that looked like, you know, 10, 15 years ago with the Bungie elevators, the Echo warehousing, you know, similar processes, you know, using brownfields, you know, funding, removing those, demolishing the buildings, removing the foundations, and, you know, cleaning them up to get them to a point where now we can redevelop it with housing. Ideally, we would like to see this property get redeveloped with housing. Right now, we're doing some townhomes down our Lake East Manawa subdivision by Lake Manawa. We think that would be another good site for those type of homes to go, but we're just not sure. You know, we're gonna rely on the development community to kind of give us some feedback on what would work there. But again, I think this is another successful project for the city, another great example of how you know, revitalize neighborhoods, remove these, you know, obsolete, blighted type projects, and come back in with something new and fresh that's a benefit to the whole. So with that, we're here to answer any questions that you may have about the project.
Do you remember how much you paid to relocate the business?
$2,900.
$2,900. And was that with CDBG?
If you had more funding, could you decontaminate the rest of the contaminated areas? Is there just not enough money to do that?
That's something that we had talked about, is getting rid of the rest of the contamination that's on the site, and then potentially just putting environmental covenants on the right of way. So there wouldn't be any covenants on the actual site.
We don't foresee there being development in the right of way. I mean, more or less, I would just like fiber companies coming through, but there's a small little pocket there in the southwest area that projects like that we do want to get cleaned up, so that when we finally put out for an RFP, you know, developers really have a clean slate to work with. But you know, Desi has done a really good job of getting this site cleaned up to a point where we feel we're close to getting out ready for development.
And the reason why there's still a little bit of contaminate. So this house is gone. It was so close to the boundary that we didn't want to, you know, affect the structure of that other house there. So that's why we couldn't get all of that contamination.
So in using the CDBG funds, both, you know, to do the initial demolition and then matching brownfields grant, as you go into that redevelopment process with the RFP, is there like an affordability target or a mix that you're looking for related to that? So what does that look like in terms of some of the other work you've done on West Broadway or First Avenue and then in like Manawa or East Manawa?
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, for us, I mean, knowing that we have those type of funds, you know, encumbered on the site, there's gonna have to be a low to moderate income housing component. You know, and ideally, you know, it'd be great if we could develop it all out with, you know, affordable housing. But if there's an opportunity to do a mix, you know, of market rate and affordability, that would be great too. But understanding most of those are gonna have to be for low to moderate families. As it pertains to Broadway, you know, we are seeing a mix of that coming through. A lot of it has been market rate. Some of the projects you'll see coming out of the ground in the next year or so, I think Hoppy Development, you know, at 28th and First Avenue. That's 89 units of all affordable housing that's going to be done. So it just kind of, you know, stacks upon itself, you know, different funding mechanisms and different requirements. But, you know, we see this as being another opportunity for affordable infill development in existing neighborhoods.
Yeah, at least 51% of the housing will have to be affordable.
Yeah. And the Hoppy development was on another CDBG site. So, yeah. I have one other question. We're all doing a new comp plan, and you're gonna have a new downtown master plan. How does this kind of approach, you know, figure into kind of what you guys are thinking about, particularly kind of the south downtown portion of your
You know, I think this is a good representative project that we can call out in the comp plan and use it more or less as an example where we can replicate this type of success in other areas of the city. You know, obviously, you know, areas south of downtown have much heavier type industrial uses. A lot of those are, I'm calling it legacy type of, like ConAgra. You know, that would, you know, if ConAgra ever had to be redeveloped, that's probably a much different conversation. It involves a lot more funding than just brownfields. But certainly our comp plan will address, like, how do we responsibly and efficiently remove these blighted areas and go back with something that's productive, whether it be housing, whether it be, you know, commercial, maybe some lighter type industrial. Certainly our land use plan would want to call that out. I could see our community character chapter want to call that out. Again, we have a demonstrated success rate at it, and I don't foresee that stopping anytime soon. I think we want to continue that forward into 2050 and beyond. But as the projects happen, you know, we'll kind of figure out what goes there next. But certainly, you know, Council Bluffs being a pretty much an industrial city for most of its history, we need to have a game plan together for when these sites come online. What are we going to do with it? Because it usually takes some type of local government involvement to demolish it and get it back to a state of productive use.
This is a great story, and I appreciate y'all sharing this. I'm curious about what kind of pushback was there when this project came to be? I mean, thinking about community, was there anyone that said, hey, don't leave these nice people alone, they're living in this building, or this is a historic building, don't tear it down? Or was it welcome, like, hey, finally y'all are getting rid of 100-year-old barrels of mystery juice? Well, how was it received?
We did a lot of community engagement at first, and there's several meetings that took place outside because that was during COVID, so we actually met in the local parks. But the neighbors were very welcoming. They wanted to see the building go for sure. I don't think that there was any pushback like about leaving people in that sort of building that was deteriorating as bad as it was. There was a little pushback when all the trucks were driving around, for sure.
When the dirt showed up?
Yeah.
From what I recall, I think the owner was a little hesitant to sell, you know, because it's 10,000 square foot home in his idea, so you know, he was a little hesitant to want to sell. But there was a lot of crime associated with that property, and it needed to go, and we were able to work a deal out with them where he was able to relocate himself and his business, acquire the property, and demo it. So it worked out for the best for everybody.
Did you work with any community organizations to find other living situations for the people that have been there?
We helped them find another living situation. We paid for their relocation costs as well.
But also the people on-house people that were, you know, living temporarily in there. Did any of the common services groups?
I'm curious. No, I don't remember working any with other organizations. Yeah.
Where the contaminated soil was taken to?
The Melbourne landfill.
Okay.
what was the size of the site?
About 1.5 acres.
And then what was the total cost of the cleanup?
Well, we're not quite done, but we probably, we'll definitely get to the 600,000. Yep. Might have a little left over, but we'll get very close.
So the 1.5 also includes some of the residential properties on the edge of the park as well. So we're talking about that entire north half of the park.
Great. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Desi.
Good job.
This is a great example of all the things, public engagement, environmental concerns. So Kent, when you rewatch this, please dig in and take note, Kent and Laura. And so next, this is not Jody Holston, this is Eva Roberts from Front Porch Investments. Eva and the team are doing a lot of great things in the organization and in the community. There's a lot of updates that were happening, and so what better time to share those and take some questions about what's happening in the affordable housing ecosystem, if you like. And so Eva's here to share those things and answer any questions about Front Porch.
Thank you, Keith. I'm not Jody, it's not January, but otherwise people will be on track. Just to ground us in the current challenges that our city is facing, we wanted to share a little bit of data, which won't sound unfamiliar to most of you here today. Home prices have risen up to 78% since 2016, while wages are only up about 30%. And as a result, we know that almost half of renters are cost burdened, which means that they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And in 2016, 75% of households could afford the median income, and today that's only 50%. So this isn't, when we talk about housing affordability, it's not just impacting the lowest income households, it's really squeezing people at every income level. We know from some of the major research that's been conducted in our region in the last few years that more than 100,000 new affordable units are needed in the Omaha Metro by 2040 to meet projected demand. And so we need coordinated long-term investment and leadership to reverse course. And that's where Front Porch was created to come in. The heart of our work is the vision to foster a community where safe, quality, and affordable housing is accessible to all. And so Front Porch was created to bring partners together in rooms like this and invest where the market alone can't. And our mission and vision drive everything that we do, but our goal is to operate within the larger ecosystem as a partner. We have developed 3 core focus areas to tackle the housing crisis for multiple areas, and they're described a little further on this wrap card that I'll pass around. But just at the high level, we are investing in solutions. That includes our Development and Preservation Fund, which is sort of our flagship program. That's a lending program that accelerates production of new units and preservation of existing units. The Greenlining Fund, which is intentional reinvestment in formerly redlined communities with a focus on home ownership. And then the Innovation Fund focuses on fostering creative solutions to reduce barriers to development. We also are working in advocacy to drive policy changes that we'll talk about. And then, part of why we're in this room today is engagement with partners in the community to bridge solutions between sectors. We'll talk a little bit about the Development and Preservation Fund. It was launched with ARPA funding through the city of Omaha back in 2022, matched with private philanthropy, making it a true public-private partnership. And with the recent addition of $40 million in TIF-backed bonds through the city of Omaha and the Logier Foundation, we now have created the region's largest flexible housing fund. And our intention is to deploy over $20 million a year into affordable and workforce housing going forward. And it's designed to do what conventional financing often can't through flexible low interest financing, 2 to 4%, that makes deeply affordable and mixed income housing projects possible. And Front Porch is just in a position to take the kind of risks that banks and other funders can't to utilize innovative approaches and center equity into work. And because it's a revolving loan fund, every dollar we deploy recycles and again, so that impact compounds and those investments stay in the community in perpetuity. We are not done. We'll be raising an additional $27 million over the next 4 years to meet the growing demand across the region. To date, in just 3 years, the fund has deployed $37 million and financed over 1,800 affordable units. Most of them are still in various stages of construction. And that has leveraged almost $700 million in other housing investment
So a relatively small investment from front porch can help make a much larger project happen. This includes single-family homes, large multifamily projects, both rental and for sale. And just examples of projects include adaptive reuse of a vacant like building, historic preservation, first-time developments from first-time developers, mixed income senior housing, and housing for youth aging out of foster care. And so our hope and we're seeing proof that these favorable loan terms are bringing new developers into the affordable housing space, and then encouraging those experienced developers to invest in affordable housing and not just focus on maximizing profit. Here's a map of the projects that we funded to date. This is also available on our website, and it's interactive. You can click on each project to learn a little bit more about units, AMI, and sort of the design of the project. Mostly we've had the primary investments in North Omaha, but really strong growth in South Omaha and Council Bluffs. We are still seeing gaps in Sarpy and Outer Douglas County, which are all areas that we can and want to invest in. So we would love to talk with any of you that are focused on those communities. And then of the 29 projects that have been funded so far, 86% of them include units for households earning under 80% of AMI, which really reflects the data that that's where the greatest need is. And we're really happy to see that. And again, 90% of the projects we funded so far, it is also much more expensive. Remain affordable. Income band partly because of LIHTC, so we'd like to see more units in that 60 to 80%, and then the very, very lowest income under 30. And most 94% have been new construction. So we really are trying to crack the nut of what it's going to take to incentivize more preservation, so that we don't lose the affordable units that we have in the community while we're trying to close that gap through building. Beyond loans, we also are helping create development opportunities by partnering with public agencies and nonprofits to bring underutilized land to life. So very similar to what you were describing. We've led 3 such projects where we were able to partner. They were all nonprofit owners of land or underutilized buildings that wanted to see that activated into affordable housing. And so this is a tool that can unlock sites that might otherwise remain vacant or underutilized. And we're really looking to expand this effort. So if you're aware of anyone who owns land or a building that they'd like to see activated into affordable housing, please reach out. That's a real area of growth. You might have heard about this new urban core fund that we have launched. This is again through the new financing from the city of Omaha. We are seeking TIF eligible projects in this urban core redevelopment area, which is about a 770 square block area that stretches from the river to 48th and coming down to Woolworth or William, depending on the field club there. This can support property acquisition, horizontal improvements, rehab, and new construction in highly blighted areas. So we have a lot of information on our website about this new program, but we are not limited to the urban core. We still have other resources for the rest of our service area, which again is Douglas, Sarpy, and urbanized Western Potawatomi County. Last year, we received middle income workforce housing funding from DED for the first time, and we're targeting that for sale housing in Sarpy County, with a real interest in the sort of missing middle models that will stretch the dollars farther and allow them to be as affordable as possible to buyers. And then we've also in the last year built out a Council Bluffs set aside with funding from Iowa West and another funder that then Front Porch matched, so that we have resources that are dedicated for that region as well. We have just slightly refined our funding guidelines within the Development and Preservation Fund this year. All this detail is on our website, but the key difference is that our typical loan maximum has been $3 million. And in order to get the funding out into the urban core where there's a little bit more restrictions, we've increased that maximum cap to $5 million. And then we have to sort of refine the affordability rules. We're going to keep that 120% AMI as the cap for sale housing because it's so expensive to build. But that for rental, we're really going to focus on up to 100% of the area median income. And then in order to really encourage for those projects that we're investing in very long-term funds that we're not going to see recycle back in the community for a very long time, we're going to request that they have at least 50% of the units under 80% AMI. Let's speak quickly about our Greenlining Fund, which again is responding to decades of disinvestment by supporting particularly long-time residents in formerly redlined areas and future first-time homeowners. It really wants to help families stay in their homes through things like critical home repairs, legal support, tax relief, and expands access to homeownership for those that are yet to achieve that milestone. This is a resident-led fund designed, to intentionally reinvest in those communities based on the lived experience of the people who've lived there. Last year, this fund awarded $900,000 in grants to 2 community partners to support homeownership preservation through no-cost home repairs and legal and title services, and access to homeownership through down payment assistance. Here's a little bit more on the impact of this program. When we think about all the intentional investment that we're making in these formerly disinvested areas, there could be the unintended consequences of displacement. And so that's a big piece of this as well, is making sure that those legacy homeowners are not displaced through increased property taxes, for example. And so stability at the household level really helps create stability at the neighborhood level as well. And in terms of what's next for this fund, we recently contracted with a national evaluation and community engagement firm who is actually quite embedded in Omaha already. They're working on the Omaha Inland Port Authority, and we're involved with it on Design the Red Line, on a comprehensive study of what are the barriers to homeownership in our formerly redlined communities to inform the future grant making of this fund and all of the other people working in this ecosystem. So we intend to share these findings widely. The study is going to include both qualitative and quantitative research. So that would include interviews and focus groups with residents, nonprofits, other community leaders. So stay tuned for opportunities to participate in the spring and summer. And then we are recruiting for our next cohort of community advisory committee members. These are, again, people with lived experience. They either currently live or have formerly lived in those redlined areas. They don't need housing research policy experience at all. We want to have a mix of homeowners, renters, people facing barriers to housing. They're all encouraged to apply. So I do have flyers here. I'll pass those around. If you know community members or have a place that you could share this in the community in the next week or so, applications are due next Monday, the 16th. And a quick note on our innovation fund, which is our newest fund created last year to support sort of field building research, needs assessments, and creative new approaches to housing. These are relatively small investments that can help illuminate gaps and unlock future development, and most importantly, provide tools that the entire community can use. So MAPA's market research analysis, which we funded kind of early on before we had an innovation fund, is sort of the exemplar that we have in mind for these kinds of projects. So we refer to it a lot, even though it preceded this fund. Last year, we awarded about $300,000 in this fund, and we've now reopened it for 2026 with these 3 updated priority areas. So again, these kind of research and market insights that inform better decision-making, ecosystem capacity building to strengthen implementation, and then innovation in design and construction and other models that can improve affordability. So that information is on our website now. And then finally, the policy pillar. We can't fund our way out of that 100,000 unit shortage, so policy change is essential. And so we advocate for practical updates, things like zoning, permitting, incentives that remove barriers and create more incentives. And so we are involved at the local, state, and federal level. For example, we're at the table with the We Make Omaha Comprehensive Plan, the Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force. At the federal level, I just want to actually call out a really successful partnership that we had with MAPA at the end of last year, where we co-hosted a very successful event focused on federal to local implementation with these changes happening at the federal level with federal funding. How can we position the communities in our region to be competitive for those funds? So we're looking forward to continuing to partner with MAPA to engage our federal delegations on our regional housing needs. And we are about a third of the way through the legislative session in Nebraska already. It goes by really fast during that short session. So I just wanted to share a couple of the bills that we are tracking most closely. There are conversations about potentially transferring the workforce housing funds and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from DED to NIFA. So there are a pair of bills being heard on the 17th that would sort of lay the groundwork for that to happen. The workforce housing funds are set to sunset unless there's an extension. So there's a bill that would extend their sunset dates. I often hear in this meeting in particular about LB 840, which is a tool used kind of outside of larger cities to fund affordable housing. And this bill 850 would allow use of those similar funding initiatives in the larger cities to create another source for housing development. And then the dock stamp is the way that a lot of the funding at the state level is currently funded. And whereas the workforce housing funds require an appropriation. And so this bill would increase the dock stamps and allow that to provide funding for the workforce housing funds as well as the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And then there's a concern in the budget that's been proposed that would move any funds from the workforce housing funds to the trust fund and then sunset those workforce funds. So we oppose that. We want to make sure that we have all of those funds in place. They all do something different. They all serve different size communities, different types of housing, and we want to make sure that even in a year where we don't have money to put into those buckets, that they all continue to exist. So I'll just close with a couple of upcoming events. we are working with the Urban Land Institute chapter to host what they call a technical assistance panel, sort of 2-day think tank in middle of March, where we bring together local and national experts around a carry question. And so the one that we're focusing on is kind of what incentives could we layer into our current policy and funding environment locally to accelerate affordable housing development in the urban core? How do we sort of maximize the resources and the political will? And so that will happen in mid-March, and there'll be sort of a public presentation at the end of day 2, and then a final report that will come out in May. And then if you attended the READ 19 night symposium any of the last 2 summers, we have a date for 2026. It'll be a full 1-day conference on June 4th, preceded by an optional bus tour the evening before, visiting some projects that are funded through the Land Bank, Front Porch, and Spark, and talking to those developers. And then that'll be followed by a networking event that evening. So we will be putting out information soon about how to register, but for now, if you're interested, please save that date. And that, if you want to kind of follow Front Porch and stay informed, you can scan the QR code to be added to our newsletter. And with that, happy to answer your questions.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll jump in first if there aren't any burning questions. First, I want to say full disclosure, I'm on the Front Porch Investments Board of Directors, proudly. And the organization is killing it. And I think that it's smart to partner with MAPA and with the Land Bank and with Spark and other organizations to really build out a real robust ecosystem for affordable housing, and just again chipping away at that deficit that we still have. Question for you. We had a survey that we opened up late last year. What do we know from what stakeholders have told us from that? Is question number 1. Question number 2 is, what is where's the front door or Front Porch in terms of like people that have ideas and projects, and I know a person that, or can I get a loan, or how do I know where to plug in? What's the answer to person X or emerging developer Y who is looking for engagement?
Absolutely. So the survey that Keith's referring to, we primarily target it to the development community, kind of what changes to our loan product mix would make it easier for them to use, more well aligned to the projects that they were working on. And so these revised funding guidelines were informed by that, particularly looking at increasing those lending limits and then adjusting affordability to where it's really going to make the greatest impact. So there were sort of relatively small tweaks, but this is informed by that feedback. And we will continue every year to do that. We're in close touch with the development community to make sure that we're continuing to meet what's needed in the moment as other funding sources may change. And then in terms of how to get in touch, on our website, under the Development and Preservation Fund loan, there's a way to put in a very brief interest form, and that my colleague Aiden, who's our loan fund manager, would follow up and schedule a coffee. We have a rolling application cycle, and so Aiden really likes to meet with developers early on and understand their project, kind of work with them and help them determine when the right time would be to put in a loan for underwriting, so that when they would be receiving the funds, when they could actually use them.
Sweet, thank you. Other questions for Eva?
With Spark, do you work with their graduates of their developer academy and helping them move along?
Yeah, we've had several borrowers who've gone through Developer Academy, maybe had a pre-development grant from Spark, or at least kind of a smaller loan, and then coming from Porch for that next level of construction. So that is absolutely the ideal pipeline. And we're working with them on a lot of assessments. But what else do emerging developers need? They have developed their new co-development apprenticeship programs to kind of fill the gap between what happens when you finish the Developer Academy, but before you're ready to maybe develop on your own, where they're pairing those developers with an experienced developer and walk through the whole process, be earning equity throughout that process, and then be better positioned for a larger loan.
Yeah, I think the example of that at 2211 on Douglas Street, the property that was the non-congregate shelter that was managed by Together, and then ultimately, as they said, okay, with this site, we need to do something with it, that they kind of centered it on affordable housing into the future. That was the exact pipeline, Mark, where they created that framework as a co-development opportunity for somebody that's doing, 1, 2, 5, 10 units. How do they kind of bridge to that larger project? And it's not a straight line, but I think just the ecosystem has really evolved here, and having flexible partners like folks at Spark with the Developer Academy and thinking about that next step of co-development, but then also partners on the funding side, on Front Porch being willing to look at that and prioritize that is a huge part of it. So definitely developing the ecosystem.
Even just, so the scale of developer, like they can be coming onto like a triplex, you guys go to help them. Okay, my experience mostly folks who kind of work with you or Spark, like they want like multifamily right off the bat, but I see a lot of opportunity for like, 4 units left that could be done, and I don't know if, I mean, obviously each their own, but like maybe that's like the first stepping stone. Like, I don't know how you go from being a graduate from Spark to immediately going into developing a 56-unit apartment complex, and so I guess, how do you guys work with those developers? Maybe to say, there's a huge niche and a gap in our market for 4 units and less. So you guys help me kind of educate that and maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would say most of the emerging developers that we work with they're bringing smaller projects for that reason.
Okay.
They're also tending to bring for sale projects because they can get their money back faster. And so, yeah, we're seeing sort of duplexes, triplexes, a couple of small single family homes maybe on the block. So that I think there's a recognition that sure need to scale up.
Yeah, because I think, that battery factory site, that would be, a great one. I could see somebody coming out of Spark, working with us. Obviously, the RFP goes out, like blast it out as wide as we can, but I just, kind of the scale of developers that you work
Yeah,
with.
it is everything from a duplex to giant light tech projects with hundreds of units, and then of course front porches is a much smaller portion of their capital stack with big projects, easy, versus the small projects. But we've got, it's hard to say what the average number of units is because they do range that much.
Well, just a word of thanks to the Front Porch team. We just came back from our National Conference of Regions. It's a group of gathering of the MAPAs of the country. We brought Mayor Ewing out there. We brought Mayor Kuhn-Digg, Mayor Shudak from Council Bluffs, and got to kind of interact with their peers too, who are serving on regional council board. But I'll just note, there's a lot of conversation about housing, and everyone is trying to replicate the model that we have with Front Porch Investments. And I would just say the leadership that's been demonstrated by the philanthropic community in creating Front Porch Investments, thank you, Keith, for your service on the board, in that everybody's trying to recreate this model and having an organization that's not just trying to do the assessment at this point, not just trying to kind of test the waters and see what the market is, but really kind of going through this process of iteration. I mean, we are in such a unique position of communities our size, and even communities a lot larger. Kansas City is trying to do this right now. And so I would just note, like, we are quite fortunate. Thank you, Front Porch. And I would just note too, on the federal advocacy side, we're so fortunate to have Congressman Mike Flood leading a lot of the conversations about this and having great stories to tell from our metro about how this stuff works in the smallest communities to the largest communities. So a lot of great things going on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Okay, everybody looks super engaged, and then even act like you present, because it's gonna be an annual report. Okay, everybody just look at Eva and look like you're really into it, okay? It's gonna be great. Okay. 1, 2, 3, perfect. Okay, all right, thank you.
Do you want to be in it too? Do you want credit?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Good job.
Well, now, let's move on to our committee updates. And actually, you are up next, so get ready. And if you didn't take a handout, please take one. I don't see other handouts. There are some other handouts back there. Make sure you grab those before you take off. Observe the names of the folks who did not show up. Let's make sure we get the questions of the folks. When I saw Dr. Hughes is in there, Zach is still in there. Okay, great. And you're up, Ashley.
Hi everyone again. Super brief update. We will be meeting next Tuesday for our meeting. We will be talking comp plan again with We Make Omaha. We are also going to hopefully talk a little bit about MAPA's market value analysis tool, and then also hopefully a brief conversation as we're still in session about just policy and some stuff that we should look out for, potentially looking at any hearing dates that might be coming up. We just want our members to really have an opportunity to get engaged, get informed. These are wonderful pictures from our mixer in December. I always love when we have new faces. And yeah, so just come and hang out with us. We're pretty fun group.
Thank you. Great.
Hi.
Rick, before you go, you have to share who you think is gonna win the Super Bowl and what are you gonna be sipping on Sunday?
What is it, Patriots versus?
Seahawks.
Seahawks. Ooh, that's tough. I'm gonna go with Seahawks because they're like light green and blue colors,
Right on.
right?
Yes.
I like the neon green, so I'm going with that one.
That's the same analysis that most took. So that.
Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is. I'm Brittany Stevens with Infrastructure Committee. Super excited to be here today. We actually had an event 2 days ago, so happy to report on that. Thank you, Saul, for coordinating everything. I'm looking at my notes here. The committee met 2 days ago, and this is something we started last year where we wanted to actually get into the community and engage and do site tours and get out of the room, right, and go into the community. So we partnered with Cordia Clean Energy Solutions. Carolyn Rucker there is fantastic. She's their business development lead. She's very passionate about getting engaged and seeing how they can help. So there were about 20 of us attendees, and we went both to the California and the Howard Street plants. For those who don't know, Cordia provides district energy, steam, and chilled water to a significant portion of downtown Omaha, Creighton University, supporting critical infrastructure through highly efficient centralized heating and cooling systems. So we got a behind scenes tour. A lot of the people aren't familiar. Huge mural on it. When you look at it from the College World Series, it's behind that mural. Is one of their facilities. So they talked about all the cost savings that they provide and their relationships with MUD and OPPD and City of Omaha, providing just reliability and reduced environmental impact for connected buildings. So I think they gave us a good history lesson of some of the people in that mural. Back since the 60s, they've grown from like 8 customers up to like 85 now. So why does that make a difference, right? Instead of 85 different people providing their own heating and cooling systems, they get to centralize all of that equipment into specialized workforce that can focus on that. And then we could take those rooftops and reallocate that for I don't know, they were showing beautiful pictures of what they've done in other facilities with rooftop bars or pools or housing, etc. So that's the ultimate impact here. So afterwards, we had networking and another social. We like our socials at the Mattress Factory. That was great. I think the other thing I wanted to highlight is that we had at least 4 or 5 students join us that day. So if you recall my last update, we thank you. We had some faces here in the room that presented to the UNO campus. Some of those same students did come back. So thank you again for last quarter presenting the students of the importance of each of our roles in the community to eliminate that brain drain and get them engaged. They came to our site tour and they were asking the most questions, and they came to our social. That's exactly what we were shooting for. So so much that they even asked Cordia, hey, we have a contractor association. Come talk to us about how contractors can get engaged in the community. So I think we got the ball rolling, which is exactly what we were shooting for. In terms of the future, I am looking for a presenter still come April. We had a switch in speakers. So if anyone is interested or to come be a guest speaker or host a site tour if you want in April, I would love that. I'm looking for ideas. In June, we have Heather Tippy Pierce from City of Omaha. We've asked her to come and engage, and the City of Omaha has updated their website. So the community wants to know, how do we engage? What are all the updates, etc. So that's the plan for June. Any questions, Saul? Did I forget anything?
No, I think you covered it all.
Okay. Thank you, Saul, for coordinating all the logistics and providing the directions and the maps. I get lost every time I come into this building, so all the little arrows help me. Thank you.
That's great. Well, Britta, I think I asked you this before, but is this subcommittee plugged into the city's infrastructure task force?
That is still a goal of ours. I need to follow up on that. It is definitely of interest. So I will follow up with, I think, Austin Rouser and Chris Hawkins. I will follow up and get them engaged. And then I also represent the chair for ACEC, American Council of Engineering Companies, consultants. And I was in a meeting earlier this week and we talked about the infrastructure committee too, because we host a huge 400-person engineering conference in September, and we want to engage them too, because we want to talk about infrastructure, specifically about the design and the construction community coming together. So what better people to reach out to? So it is on my radar. Thank you.
Thanks, Britt. All right, Zach, can you hear us take a sip of that Theraflu and come on and give us an update?
I'm gonna keep it short and sweet here, Keith. Last meeting in January, we had a presentation from the Monarch Joint Ventures and Mercy Manzanares here. Interesting presentation on what this group is doing, tagging and tracking monarch butterflies, some amazing pieces of data and some great mapping that they shared with us just on what they're seeing. Within our group, the Natural Resource Committee, we were able to kind of connect the dots a little bit between the Monarch Joint Venture and some of the ongoing projects. For instance, DC West School out in Valley, Nebraska just finished their athletic complex expansion, and they engaged with Monarch Joint Venture to establish monarch habitat in some of the outlying unused areas of the site. And so what we're seeing is a need to connect our local projects with groups like this in order to kind of further the goals of the Natural Resource Committee with biodiversity, habitat establishment, and whatnot. So great presentation. We are working on establishing our calendar for the year for more of these presentations to the group. We are going to visit Fontenelle Forest in the fall. As we get closer, obviously, to that meeting, we will send out information because we're working with Michelle Foss down there to get maybe a Heartland 2050 hike centered around that meeting in the fall. Other ideas from our group were First Star Fiber, Beltline Trail, North Omaha Trail. So we're gonna try and take our committee meetings on the road a little bit, handle some business, and then visit some project sites. That's all I got.
Great. Thanks, Zach. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that a project like this is a part of this committee's work. That's awesome. If there are no questions for Zach and Natural Resources, we'll transition to MAPA updates. And who's taking? We're going to D-Town. We're going to Detroit.
Certainly will. Just to mention about the site visit, as you know, since 2016, MAPA has been encouraging community members, community partners to attend, and this is a 2 to 3 day site visit, and the idea is that if you want to learn from any transportation, economic development projects that are being done, worked on in different parts of the country. In this case, I think this year we're going to be headed to Detroit. Is that correct, Mike?
That's right.
Yeah, yep. So I haven't had the opportunity to go, but I believe that some of you, and I know that even our Natural Resources Chair, he did mention at our last meeting about his experience learning in previous trip to one of our site visits. So if you still would want to go, and make sure that you fill out the form, let us know, and we'll be happy to have you. And that's the reason, actually, in fact, why Laura is not here today, because she's planning on doing some more work regarding the next potential site visit.
And I'll just note on the learning site visit, going out to Detroit, our regional partner out there, SEMCOG, they just do such interesting work. And I think there's just a lot of the partners that we've worked with on the ground there, they're really, I think, almost reciprocal leadership exchange, because there's things that those communities come and talk to us about afterwards to learn about stories that we share, case studies that we have. And it's just a great opportunity to see how other communities tackle these problems in the built environment, in coordination, collaboration across the region. So, speaking of which, do you want me to take this one? So, I can.
More than one.
So March 11th is our next quarterly council of officials. Eva highlighted the last one we had, which was our regional housing symposium. Our next one is going to be at the Art Center at Iowa Western Community College. And we're going to be focusing on some of these conversations around local government, energy, and really this moment around this kind of other form of infrastructure that you know, in growth and development and in demand is something that I think oftentimes gets taken for granted, but we have a lot of different, you know, partners at the local level, at the state level, you know, looking at these infrastructure needs and really kind of thinking about proactively, how do we sort of respond to the challenge? And so Chris has been a great partner in kind of helping us think through this. We're also going to be bringing Iowa State Extension, who's doing a project called RSTEP, which is about, you know, really local government's perspective and role in shaping policy and supporting economic development and managing some of the concerns that come out of that. And we'll have a panel of folks at that lunch hour presentation doing that. For Iowa folks, if you're in city or county government, we'll also have that RSTEP workshop. So that group from Iowa State Extension has a large grant from the Department of Energy about these decision-making processes, the tools that they're developing to support those decision-making processes, and really just how to work with all of the community stakeholders that have an interest in these decisions and what local government leaders can do to work on that piece. So that'll follow our luncheon from 1 to 3, partnering with SWIPCO to get the word out just to kind of other county officials as well. So it should be a really kind of another engaging sort of lunch hour of just kind of these conversations, but then taking it with our Iowa stakeholders and going deep into, you know, what our role is and how we can support those decision-making processes. Okay, before we get into the transportation projects update, I want to give a word of congratulations to Rachel Gatch from our transportation team, who's recently promoted. That she's doing, but I wanted to shout her out before she came up to the podium.
Thank you, appreciate that, Mike. So like I said, I'm a transportation planner. Our transportation and data teams will be giving a few updates on some of the work we've been doing. This includes our the transportation improvement program. Our call for projects recently closed on both the TMA and the RPA sides. So we're going to go through a little bit of that process and the application that we're received. We're going to have open public comment periods. Those aren't quite lined up, but they're really similar between the RPA and the TMA. So those will be for the TMA, it'll be February 17th through March 14th, and for the RPA, it'll be February 12th through March 9th. A little bit of background on the selection for that. As you guys might recall, we went through the volunteer process. Chris Gibbons and Bruce Fountain volunteered to be a part of the mini grant committee. This is made up of members from both TTAC and RPAC working together to do project selection for the mini grant Heartland 2050 project applications. So this is kind of diagrams. Diagrams are nice. Everyone likes a good diagram. Kind of just the organizational structure for that mini grant. All right. So we received 7 applications on the mini grant side. This is 1.25 million total requests spread over across those 7 applications. There's 3 from Omaha, and this is across the TMA, 1 from Papillion, 1 from Papio Energy, 1 from the MAPA region, and 1 from Valley. And so we've got a large variety of projects here. I won't go into a lot of detail over that. That'll be covered more within the Heartland 2050 mini grant community itself. So if you're interested in that, that information will also be made available. That application process, the selection process, like I said, we're in public comment period. That's going to be opening here pretty soon. And then the grant committee will be meeting March 17th. So members, Chris and Bruce, those transportation staff will be reaching out shortly about more information regarding those projects and anything that you need to do ahead of time. Following that, that'll feed into our TIP process, which will be for the TMA in June, and award notifications in July. On the RPA side, we received 1 application. We had a couple of communities that were thinking about it and ended up deciding, because they have a lot going on. One of our communities is having RAGBRAI come through, and so they're just like super busy right now. And so a couple of them decided to default in favor of the fall application cycle. So we just had this one from Potawatomi Conservation for 500,000 total requests. We have about 800,000 in that funding pot as well.
My kids go to Underwood School, so I'm so excited.
Yeah,
Finally getting there,
a lot of work putting into trying to feed into these top and trail projects in the area.
And I would just note they recently received 1.9 million from state TAP this would complement that. And MAPA supported a $1.9 million ask to USDOT to support kind of the broader trail planning, getting this segment, but then also thinking about the continued connection on the Great American Rail Trail. So a lot of energy and excitement that's being led by our transportation.
This application is actually part of a broader, it's like $4.5 million project. So we're really excited to see how this is going off and just to make more of those connections along that trail line. And then, like I said, we've got that public comment period that'll be opening next week with the RPAC Policy Board and Technical Committee meeting March 11th and typical in July. Any questions?
When will the trail be done?
Sooner than you thought.
I've only been waiting for years, so.
It's been about a decade.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long process. I'll say for that, but we're glad to see that it's moving forward and progress is being made. And I think it's been really difficult also because with inflation, a lot of these trail projects have just increased so exponentially in cost. I heard one estimate where they're like, we need to plan $1 million for every mile of trail. And so that makes it really hard, especially in these like rural communities where it's hard to get funding, especially in those amounts. So they've really done a lot of grant stacking when it comes to this project. So we're really glad to see that has been able to work out.
And I think too, one of the things that we've been highlighting, and one of the reasons it took so long is once they got the initial portions of that trail built, they got kind of to the edge of the urban area where we can use some of our transportation dollars more flexibly and use it on some of the preliminary engineering and the design phases. And in the rural part of our region, we can't use the federal funds for that. And so we kind of hit this wall of, well, we don't have a way of kind of getting some of those initial questions and keeping the project moving through that project development phase. And so it's taken a little bit of a leap of faith in some ways to say, okay, this is the priority segment, but how do we set the stage for the rest of this to get built? And so both our transportation and community development team have really been working alongside those local partners to kind of try to find the flexible resources we need to keep this stuff moving ahead. But yeah, it's really taken the local leadership. The trail committee is super engaged, the county super engaged, Pot County Conservation is just doing a great job as well. So.
I actually have a stupid question. How does operations work with snow removal on the trails?
That's a great question. I don't know that they thought of that.
They're required as part of the process to be able to lay out, I forget how many years, but it's like a chunk. It's either like 10 or 25, I forget which. And they have to lay out a maintenance plan for the project. A lot of times that's in coordination with the local community. So like in this case, if Potawatomi Conservation isn't going to do the maintenance, they're required to be able to show that like maybe they worked with the broader Pot County or maybe with like Underwood to work out some type of maintenance should also and just access problems.
Great. Any more questions for Rachel? Seeing none. Congratulations, don't spend all that money in one place. Who's doing the RMVA?
Do you have one, Jim? Do you have enough?
I have a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, good morning, everybody. Jim Warner, transportation planner. Couple quick things. Really excited about all these, so hopefully I can pass on my enthusiasm to you. We just kicked off with our consultant team last week, and DOT partners our freight plan. So this is the first time we're doing a comprehensive regional freight study. The state DOT has been putting together plans for probably the last 12 years now in a 4-year cycle. So there's an experience of it, but this is our opportunity to really say what's important to us and what are the impacts freight has. On the right, just really quickly, transportation is everything, right? It's pipelines, it's rail, it's air, and it's what we think of, I guess, most commonly with freight, either through traffic or kind of that last mile delivery. So a lot going on with technology, a lot of big data that we're going to take advantage of that we haven't seen yet. We'll come to stakeholders, a lot of engagement there, and also to virtual public open houses, as well as our final plan to the board. That'll take about a year, so we'll hope to have a final plan this time next year. Safe streets and roads for all. Very quickly, we have an approved plan which unlocks this funding, $1 billion, one final $1 billion in our current transportation bill. Project implementation, those are projects that are identified in that plan at that first link there at the bottom. And supplemental planning and demonstration. I think for this group, this is the most important. There's just a lot of really creative ideas going on. So 58 awards went to different communities, everything from fire departments to universities that are looking at things, EMS, trauma, things kind of in this post-crash care, which is not traditionally the work that we do. So we're finding new partners in post-crash care. We're going to be talking with the Nebraska State Trauma Board later this month, and just really a lot of interesting things like pre-hospital transfusion, right? So if you're in a traumatic accident where you have a lot of blood loss, this is giving somebody an infusion or a transfusion before they get to the hospital, just kind of a change in the way that we've done business for years. So we are actively going to look for folks, and we're going to kind of put together some recommendations and take them to communities. We've missed out on this, so especially for smaller communities. City of Omaha has been awarded this past year, but if there's something you'd like to see done and you say, can I make my community safer, that's what we want to do. That notice of funding will probably come open in March and applications by June. So if you have something you're thinking about, please reach out.
And congratulations to the City of Omaha Public Works Department for the $10 million implementation grant, which is fantastic. And I think it's just a lot of time we've been focusing on the planning, whether it's Division 0 or a regional plan. But the acceleration now to actually implement both through these competitive resources at the national level and also state resources, we're starting to see the pieces fall in place.
Absolutely. And so Nebraska, for example, is kind of more provided a more formalized application process, an annual application to their highway safety improvement funds, federal safety dollars, programs for safety as well. So we're looking to take advantage of all of those funding sources for projects. We have a performance measures website. You can reach out there. You can see how we're doing safety wise. I will say we're not doing so great. So both Iowa and Nebraska saw a decrease in the number of fatalities. Iowa in particular was pretty substantial. We did not. We had the largest number of fatalities in our region, unfortunately, since we started looking in 2006. So we have work to do. We're very excited in working with all of you to get to zero by 2040. Sarpy I-80 interchange. Some of you in the room that have been here for a while probably heard us talk about our planning environmental linkages study. That's transitioned very quickly. I would say quicker than I anticipated, but they're going to provide an open house next week on the preliminary design. So very exciting. A lot of work. Really, what it does and what we studied were to kind of take traffic away from two interchanges that we're just not operating effectively, and we're going to continue to degrade in the future at Highway 31 and Highway 370. But it also just provides an opportunity to support just the growing transportation system in Western Sarpy County with the development that they've seen. So information is there. You can go out and see it. There is a comment about, comments can be taken so that there's not really an opportunity to provide a ton of feedback online. So if you want to go see it, I'd recommend going in person or following the open house. They'll post the information as well. And finally, so ash to aware safety. If you've heard the term, ash to aware provides all kinds of software and planning tools. This one is unique to Nebraska, so they've paid for the platform. And this is available for everybody. This is public works, this is planning departments, this is law enforcement. I'll be honest, the biggest uptake in our region right now is law enforcement. They're using that crash data to take a look at targeted enforcement or just understand what they're seeing in the region. And prior to providing information for grants for justification as well. So there's a new screening analysis tool. They're looking to give training next month, and we'd like to provide the opportunity. I will say this application, this tool will go into our transformative regional investment prioritization system, or TRIPS, that we're working on locally. And really the goal is if you bring a project forward in the future from the Nebraska side, we'll be looking for you to use this tool to provide that safety input. So this is another great tool. not a lot of uptake, to be quite honest, from local jurisdictions. So if you're interested, and you want to see how the tool works, we'll share out both the information, the link for the online tool, but also to sign up for it. So any questions on those 4 items?
Question?
Yeah.
No, I was, thank you for, Jim, addressing I was gonna ask you a sticky question about the uptick in KSIs here on this side. I guess I'll ask the question. So does that help SS4A work and Vision Zero work, or is it a hindrance? Does it sow doubt of the efficacy of it? What do you think that means for us?
So, I think from the MPO standpoint, really the city of Omaha has been the one that's been implementing projects. So putting forward, we've done a lot of planning, but I don't think it's a negative statement. We're not, now we have a plan and we've done worse. So why? What's going on? I think we've not taken those proactive steps implementing those projects or bringing forward some of the plan recommendations. But I think it gives us a focus. Not only did we have 80 fatalities in our region, Douglas and Sarpy County and the urbanized area of Potawatomi County, compared to 50 or 60. So I mean, it's not just a small change, and those fatalities are most vulnerable. So we're seeing in non-motorists fatalities and serious injuries also spiked. 2024, 2025 have not even reported on, but you can understand as Nebraska had its largest number of non-motorist fatalities last year, we're going to see a lot of those numbers that they are in our region. So, what I'd say is we have a crisis to attend to, and we have the tools in our toolbox to move forward. So, in that sense, I'm excited. It is a lot of work. It moves fast. That NOFA will come out, and when we first started the process, we got 3 months to fill it out, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. So we need to be ready and look at help communities be ready to apply.
Yeah, I would just say two finer points to even that. If there are safety projects, investments that you want to make in your region, or if there's things that, even more broadly tied to, work in that kind of whole safe systems approach, whether it's about that post-crash care, or if it's about, even the mental health aspects of substance abuse disorders leading to drug and drunk driving. There's advocacy efforts, or there's other things that are going on in the region that we can at least have that conversation with before that NOFA hits the street. Now's the right time. And certainly if there's infrastructure investments, if there's projects you want to pilot and demonstrate, talk to Jim, talk to Rachel, talk to Lindsay on our team, just to have those conversations about, does this make sense? And Keith, to your point, I think, the planning piece on this, and what does it mean if this number goes up a lot in 1 year? I think there's one, the fact that we're even looking at it, and there's an accountability measure in there, and MAPA and the city of Omaha have goals to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. That we have the reporting piece Jim glossed over it, but this performance measures dashboard that the team put together is incredible. And that kind of accountability is in place, and that we invested the effort into having the ability to measure it and to talk about it and to benchmark is huge. But I think the other part of like planning and policy, it's so hard to see, and maybe not the planners in the room, but when you change a policy, it's the decisions that follow it that accrete. And I think when we look at the I-80 interchange and the planning that went into identifying that need, and the work that MAPA has done, both in that study of the interchange itself, but then also in supporting V-STEP and all the connecting corridors to it that had safety at the center of it. I think there's almost the things that we avoided by not having that in place that they're harder to quantify. But I think each of those decisions, each of those project investments that come after it are really that thing that we want to benchmark from. How has the decision-making process changed? And ultimately, that's the story of planning. It's really hard to sort of zero in on it. We have the actual tools to do that now in a way that we could look at a baseline scenario versus what gets implemented and be able to quantify that in a way that we wouldn't be able to. On the Iowa side too, I will give them a lot of credit. They passed a hands-free bill last year. And in that 6-month period where they had, were giving out citations, they gave out 14,000 citations for people using mobile devices while they drove. And they went from a 95% non-compliance rate, so 95% of the time where they would look to enforce it, they saw somebody using a mobile device, down to 10% in a 6-month period. And so you look at that and, you know, it's hard to show causation, but if you are giving out 14,000 warnings that people are going to get slapped in the face with a $250 fine on the back end of it, and you see a compliance rate from 95% to 10% in a 6-month period, policy matters. And so there are bills similar to that in Nebraska unicameral in the short session that are still under consideration, but it continues to be an area of policy that can have a big impact.
Awesome, great. So
Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
It should strengthen the case. That's great. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Gino. So now on to the regional market.
Sure. So this tool, we're going to continue talking about it. I know we profiled it at the meeting in December, but I think the message I'd like to carry is that, you know, this is another kind of toolbox that we put together that I think is a very broad range of you know, sort of understanding about what's driving housing development, housing affordability, and also kind of neighborhood change. There's kind of 2 axes to that tool. One is kind of change over time, how quickly are things changing, and then really how strong is the market? Where is the private sector really driving change in these neighborhoods? And you kind of see those colors combined to purple in that map. And so ultimately, if you have interest in kind of understanding things, this snapshot that we've put together right now, it's very, very useful, and it's compelling, and we kind of show the ways that we see this tying. I think the place that we see this initially being really valuable is in some of these comprehensive plan updates, in sort of these stakeholder groups that are looking at housing. So the housing coalition that Council Bluffs has pulled together, you know, kind of aligning and showing priorities. I think our hope is to really find these places that, again, kind of that policy making, that prioritization. I think that's the early investment here that we see. But ultimately, I think it's a great storytelling tool that, you know, there are differences across the region. There are places where things are, you know, kind of steady and not changing quickly, and there's places where things are changing very quickly. And if we want to, you know, bend that arc, there's places that can guide that prioritization. So ultimately, if you think there's a group that could benefit from this, we would love to sit down with them. We're working very closely with the land bank, for example. They have some things in their strategic plan that tie to this, and obviously with We Make Omaha, City of Council Bluffs, doing their comp plan updates. Huge opportunity to think about, okay, where does this piece fit into that decision-making process? How can we inform planning commissioners, other people about all these efforts and where they can fit? So more to come on this, but tremendously grateful to the partners at Front Porch Investments for allowing us to do this and building something that we're excited about being able to maintain ourselves. So, you know, we have the consultants to kind of advise us on how to create this. They gave us a pipeline of projects, and the stakeholder gave us a pipeline of projects to dig into, but ultimately it's something that we see as a very useful tool for us to sustain longer term. So thank you. And then finally, MAPA, you may not know, we have a nonprofit arm, MAPA Foundation, very cleverly named. But this 501c3, it's been used for a number of things over time, but most recently it's a nonprofit development organization through the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. And what that means is that when communities in Nebraska have program income that comes from CDBG, so maybe they invest in a property and you know, that person sells that property within 5 years, those funds kind of are still CDBG funds technically, and have to be repurposed for something that is in line with kind of CDBG more generally. So MAPA Foundation and partners across the state have these organizations. This has been something that we haven't really tapped into. We're not, I guess I am a nonprofit executive, Grant. And I guess we get to be nonprofit executives in this way. This is not something that MAPA is set up to do. And so we are doing some capacity building of our own just to understand, okay, where do we invest? Where do we partner? How do we sort of figure out our path in this? Because it is a tool that is very useful, as we can see from partners like Front Porch Investments. It fits into different places, and as we've demonstrated in Blair, can be a useful fiscal agent to do things like rural workforce housing. But we don't want to be on the sidelines. We want to be as proactive as we can be. Part of that's kind of this looking at ourselves and understanding that RFP is out on the street. And so if you know anybody who could help advise us, the kind of initial piece here is really this capacity building assessment. Where do we fit into this overall landscape? What tools do we have at our disposal? What haven't we done? What could we do? And really then taking that to our MAPA board to really say, okay, these are some key places that we want to invest, that we want to be active, and really kind of guide our staffing, our partnerships, our contracting around this to get these dollars out to the community. Right now, we have that $1 million fund, that's most of the funds that we have are committed to that Blair revolving fund. But over the next 10 years, it grows to about $3 million with other investments that are made. And so do we want to grow that? Is that enough? Where do we fit in? What do those partnerships look like? And how do we talk to our members and partners about what we can do? Because right now, we look at them very wide-eyed and we say, gosh, we should look into that. And we don't really know. So this is our sort of foray into this space and trying to figure out where our role is in this whole ecosystem. So check it out if you're interested.
Thanks, Mike. Now we move on to real quick question on that. Is there on the foundation, is there a committee, a body that is aside from the board, or is the foundation the board?
That's a great question. The board of directors from MAPA is also the MAPA Foundation board. And I think one of these questions long-term organizationally is that the right organization? Should it look different? And that's, I mean, again, that's kind of one of these questions that we want to have through this. I think, again, like it's a very useful tool. You know, candidly, it makes us eligible for things that MAPA wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. And, you know, having it be this kind of close alignment with our mission, mission of the MAPA Foundation at its core is the mission of MAPA. And then we have this housing piece. So again, it is a useful tool. Right now, the MAPA board of directors, if you come to, you know, 2 or 3 of our meetings during the year, they start with a foundation meeting and then they go to the MAPA board of directors. But long term, that's something that we're looking at too, to see whether that's the right composition to guide this.
Perfect. Makes sense.
We'll ask you, Keith, if we want you.
Well, please. Makes sense to me. Okay. Now on to community updates. For the good of the group, what's happening in your respective communities? Please share.
I'll share first. I mean, City Council Bluffs, our council passed a resolution before their comprehensive plan. So we're in the process of hiring Shockey Consulting out of Kansas City to help us prepare our next downtown master plan and comprehensive plan, which will take us through 2050. So with some capacity as part of that project progresses, but looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing what the future vision of Council Bluffs is going to be.
Well, kudos to you guys. I think if you look at comprehensive planning across the region, Bluffs 2030 has guided so much crazy and interesting work in Council Bluffs. And it's not often that you can look at a plan and see it just actually in action in so many different places. I think you guys have been great stewards of that. So I'm excited to see where you take.
We rely on it heavily. So
yeah,
pretty much all of our major decisions are grounded in that comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
City of Blair will be sending out RFQs for an updated comp plan next week. So been about 2015, I think, since ours has been updated. So it's time. Over time.
It's been how long?
2015.
Okay.
That was an updated version from 2008 or something like that. So
that's not too bad. Not compared to the barrels of stuff at the Brownsville project. If somebody from the planning department is here, I suppose they share that the City of Omaha's exterior repair program is now taking applications now through February 27th. Receiving applications, 0% interest loan program is designed to help low and moderate income homeowners living east of 72nd Street. So that is open.
So from, I guess, Mills County perspective and Glenwood, so I think maybe some of you are aware, a couple of years ago, the Glenwood Resource Center campus closed, which was the largest employer for Mills County. And the city of Glenwood and eventually a nonprofit was created to accept that piece of property from the state. So it's about 245 acres that are now going through that redevelopment process. We've engaged Arch Icon out of Missouri Valley to be our master developer for the site. They are going through right now updating with HDR the master plan. We're looking for multiple housing typologies to be constructed on the site. Could have 600 to 800 units maybe up on the site, a mix of single family, multifamily, duplex, fourplex, LMI housing. So we're really going to be trying to try to put it all together onto one area and separate it out, but really have a community-oriented type development. Somewhat new urbanism style, but again, kind of a modified because, it's got existing buildings on there.
And some topography.
And some topography, yeah. So probably about 8 to 10 maybe buildings, or we're going to be saving those and redeveloping those. So we're going through our environmental building assessment right now. That should be done here by May. We'll probably start with that remediation midsummer. Demolition probably beginning in July, August, and then probably new utilities late fall. So hopefully development ready sites by the beginning of 2027. So we're going to be looking for partners across the area to help with that development from a funding perspective, from just helping spread the word and looking for developers out there that are going to be interested. So we'll be branding it. So hopefully here in June we'll have a brand, and we won't call it the Glenwood Resource Center anymore.
That doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. So anyway, it's an interesting process, exciting, and it has the opportunity to really kind of change Glenwood and really put it on the map from a development perspective for the metropolitan area. So.
Well, you guys have been in the tank for a while. I mean, this has been a multi-year process. I think it'd be great, so just for the notes, back to Laura, just like, we should bring you guys back just to talk about the whole Mills County economic development stuff, because there was a lot of big wide cone of uncertainty, and you guys have navigated your way through. So I think it'd be a good time for an update.
Yeah, that'd be good.
It's good news. It's good news, Mark. How about this? Meals Thrills. How about that?
We'll take that under consideration.
I'll submit an RFP.
That's like whenever I come up with an idea, Keith, they just say thank you. That's file 13.
Our next conference is in Tulsa, and can't tell you how many times I've heard "get your kicks on Route 66."
Never heard that one
past
before.
week. Yeah, just like, man, this is laying it on thick.
Yeah.
What else? Well, you might get a little bit of time back if there's nothing else for the good of the group. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm gonna throw one out there quick. Anybody that has their New Year's resolutions that are still on track, MUD and OPPD have our Heat the Streets run for warmth coming up on March 7th here. So 2-mile walk, 5K race or 10K race. It's our largest energy assistance program fundraiser of the year. So nice early morning, early spring little workouts on leaving from Stinson Park on March 7th in the morning.
March 7th?
Yep, March 7th. Registration's still open. If you Google Heat the Streets, I can heatthestreets.org or something like that is the website. So.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Chris.
I will be there. I'll be mid-pack in the race.
Mid-pack walk.
But just before the walkers, that's where I'll be.
Thanks, y'all. Your homework is to adhere to all the updates shared. Please observe the names over here that Andrew beautifully alphabetized. Invite these people to come back to the April meeting. Also, we almost broke the record for most acronyms used, but Jim unpacked trips. You heard QEP, LRP, IDNR, TMA, RPA, SimCall, TIP, TAP, KSI, We Step, and SS4. But CDBG. Oh, wait a minute, CDBG?
Yeah. EPA.
EPA? Yeah, we broke the record. Your homework is to unpack those and come back and define those. RFP. And that's almost 20. Sorry.
We just have to make sure that we do say that we have time for any public comment.
Yes, public comments anyone from the public have any comments to be shared? All right.
I think that's it. We'll see each other in April. Thank you, everyone.